Hello and welcome back to Honest Faith Interviews. This week we are interviewing Allie Heeter. She was also a part of that panel that I had talked about last week with Ryan. And this was one of my first in-person interviews, and so it was recorded during the month of October. So some of the political questions may seem a little outdated, but I encourage you to watch and to listen and to get to know Allie. So thank you so much for watching.
I am Allie Heeter, and I am 24.
So what do people need to know about you before hearing about your faith?
I think the biggest things that always connect me in my faith is that I am of the younger generation. I am someone who came to faith as a high schooler. I didn't really know almost anything about it previously. And then since high school, I have studied religion in depth of all different types, from east to west and everywhere in between.
Was there anyone that was more significant to you than any of the others, since you studied religion from east to west, everything in between?
I have an affinity to the Christian church and to particularly the Episcopal church. I historical wise have an affinity to Norse religion, but that's outside of my personal faith bubble.
What would you say was the most significant moment in your life, and why?
Oh dear. The most significant moment of my life. Oh, can I say two?
Sure.
Well, the most significant point, partially because they're two different within the same realm, but the most significant part of my life, they're both, I don't do words. The most significant part to my life is in high school when I opened up about an abuse situation to one of my best friends. And we sat and talked, and she shared her own experience with me, and we formed this strong bond based on horrible situations that the two of us survived and realized that we were each stronger because of.
Your second one?
My second one is a moment when I was sitting in the mountains of Kentucky in at like 4 in the morning as fog was rolling in and the sun was not even anywhere near being up yet, and I decided that I wanted to be a part of the church.
What is your faith story?
Oh dear. Always this question. Kind of the big picture of my faith story. I didn't grow up in the church, but I was always parallel to it. My paternal grandfather's a Catholic deacon, and so I always knew about the church, but I didn't actually know how any of it worked. I sat through services as a kid and didn't understand anything that was happening, except that I couldn't get up and take communion because they were Catholic and I wasn't. And then in middle school, I started reading different religious texts. I read the Quran, I read the Hebrew Bible, I read the New Testament, and I read a ton of books on Buddhism because I was an angsty teenager, and so Buddhism kind of fit.
All right.
In high school, one of my friends invited me to a youth group event at her church, and I fell in love with the community, and I fell in love with the people who were there intentionally to share stories, to talk about their day, but also talk about their faith and their belief in something outside of themselves.
All right. How has your faith influenced your life?
I laugh because you know the answer. My faith has really strongly influenced my life in that it did play a large role in me choosing to major in religious studies as an undergrad, and then within the past few months, between February 2016 and now, I have kind of been on the fast track and have begun talking and going through the channels towards ordination to be a priest in the church.
That kind of informs our next question. But do you practice your faith? Why or why not?
I do practice my faith quite religiously. Ha ha ha. But I do practice my faith both in attending organized services through my studies, but also through personal reflection. I've partially as a assignment and partially because I really wanted to get back in the hang of it, but I am doing Compline every single night out of the Episcopal Book of Common Prayer, just as a rigorous every day, regardless of where I'm at, if I'm falling asleep at 2 in the morning on my couch, or if I'm forcing myself to go to bed at 9 because I need to wake up early the next morning. Before bed, I'm doing Compline to ground myself.
Great. What is the hardest thing to believe about your faith?
Everything?
Well, more specifically, like, is there a common issue that, or one little thing that really is more difficult for you to believe than anything else?
I think the hardest thing to believe and to wrap my head around is that with all of the atrocities in the world, all of natural disasters and man-made atrocities, that God is still out there. But that he's not just sitting idly by, that he's with everyone in those moments of struggle.
That is an excellent answer. What do you feel is the biggest issue facing your faith, both corporately and personally?
Corporately, right now, is the affirmation of my faith and the affirmation of my call to priesthood. It's difficult to say day in and day out, this really is what I feel called and meant to do, when there are people whose jobs it is to kind of play devil's advocate and see if there are other things that you possibly, like ulterior motives that you have to doing this. And it's draining to say over and over again, no, this is really what I'm meant to do. And then personally, it's somewhat tied into that, but it's acknowledging that I'm strong enough to do what I feel like I'm supposed to be doing, and that it's not that I'm doing this because I think it's an awesome job, but because I really feel meant to do it, even with all of the horrible things that can sometimes go in hand.
Well, you already did answer this a little bit, but is your current faith the one that you grew up with?
Both yes and no. I think as I learn more about both the Episcopal Church and the Bible in general, both the Hebrew and the New Testament, I'm looking at my faith differently, and I'm practicing a little differently. So where on paper I've been Episcopalian since I was 16 or 14 or however old I was when I first walked through the doors, and I still am now. I think what it means to me to be Episcopalian has changed a lot.
All right. Well, and I don't think I need to ask you if you attend regularly because you've already answered that as well.
Every Sunday and Wednesday and more.
What would you like the divine to tell you when you finally speak face to face?
Oh dear. 42? I think I would just like to know that... I'd like to know that there was a point to it all, that something's lasting. 42.
Yeah, 42. What do you think the divine cares about the most?
I would like to think that the divine cares the most about us caring for one another. That I think that falls into that the hardest thing is knowing the atrocities that go on in the world, because I think with everything going on, he's with us through other people. He, she, it, they. That drives me nuts. He. I don't care what pronoun I use.
Okay. If you could change one thing in the world, what would it be?
I would like to say that getting rid of the atrocities, but I think that there's a point to them because through them we see one another's strengths and we see who people really are. Through horrible situations, are we able to see that people will stand up for one another? I guess what I would like to see the most is just more kindness, more acceptance. That I would like to see a world that no one had to hide who they were.
I would agree with that. If there was one piece of wisdom that you could impart to the world, what would it be?
Be genuine.
That's a good piece of advice.
It's hard enough to be in the world. It's harder if you try to be something else.
Who is your faith role model?
You might laugh, but Kevin Smith.
Okay.
It really, outside of, you guys can read it too, but Kevin Smith, tough shit, advice from a fat lazy slob who did good, is amazing and eye-opening and so incredibly deep for someone who's known for fart and poop and dick jokes. But he has a wonderful little nugget of wisdom of that even wonderful people can die screaming, and so just be you and just live for the day, and you're never gonna be who you want to be if you keep saying, I want to be, his thing was, I want to be a filmmaker, and someone told him, then be a filmmaker. You're never gonna accomplish anything if you say, I want, and never take the steps to do it.
Very good. Is there anything else that you would like to share about your personal faith?
I guess just that it's possible to be yourself in your faith. You don't have to change anything that the divine God spirit, whatever you want to call it, made us the way we are, and made our souls the way they are, and that soul is what matters.
Have there been any personal struggles? And I say struggles only because of lack of better language for this, but that have had you question your faith, such as sexual, gender, or mental identity?
Yeah. I struggled for a long time when I first joined the church because of sexual assault and because of having survived a horrible situation and still going through some frustrations in tie with that, and anxiety disorders and post-traumatic stress from that. And there's always that nagging voice in the back of my head saying, if God loved me, why did he do this? And that's something that I think will always be with me, but goes in tie with my ideology that he's with us in those moments, and shows himself through the good that happens afterwards and the good that happens when you rise above things like that. I struggle a lot in seeing situations that friends and family members are into because of sexual identity, mental health, what have you, in situations that come up because of that. But I think I always come back to my thought that God's with us and he'll show himself eventually. Might not be as quick as we want him to be, but...
You actually answered the next two questions in that answer, so that's fantastic.
I'm psychic like that.
Yeah. Has your faith informed your political views, and how so?
It has, because I think it falls into that there are certain political views that do not fall in line with seeing every human as human and every person as equal. I fall very left of center because of a lot of this, and it definitely, when I see politicians bringing up God for negative, saying that God is the reason they hate, really grinds my gears, to be an old fogey and say grinds my gears.
Thanks, Peter. Since we are coming upon the 2016 U.S. presidential election, has your faith informed your choice of political candidate? How?
Slightly. I think my faith is part of why I'm still struggling with who to vote for, because of the top two candidates. I'm not a great fan of either of them. And there are very strong arguments against a particular candidate, which is why he is not an option whatsoever. But there are also really strong arguments against his opposition. And so I think if it weren't for my faith and my idea of everyone being equal and of the same wants and needs, I would have less of a struggle with what I'm going to be doing come November.
Okay. Has your faith driven you to want to make the world a better place?
Yes.
Okay.
Simple and sweet for that one.
Do you know if your corporate faith, i.e. the Episcopal Church, has a disaster relief arm or a charity working in the areas that need help?
I know they used to in very large situations, but I'm pretty sure they do.
Have you heard about what's going on right now in the Caribbean after Hurricane Matthew?
Yes.
If you could go and help out those people, would you? Why or why not?
If in a perfect world, I would.
Okay.
I would be down there, partially because I think it's what needs to be done. Not enough people, but it's not. It's one of those in a perfect world. Except in a perfect world, I wouldn't need to go down there, so that's the other thing.
So what's preventing you from going then?
What's preventing is a lot to do with family and social needs, as well as finances, as well as all of the things that happen when you're 21st century millennial. I hate that word, millennial, in this day
Hey,
and age.
I'm reclaiming that word.
I know. I've heard your argument. But all of the things that prevent a lot of millennials from doing a lot of things is what prevents me from helping. But also, I have roommates that need, or a roommate that needs the rent to help be paid for, and pets to care for, and things that millennials don't always have, which is I can't just drop everything and run.
So what current event troubles you the most and why?
Politics. Another sweet and simple answer.
Does your faith provide answers for this?
It tries.
Okay.
Faith tries very hard to provide answers, but those answers don't. Those answers sometimes bring up more questions.
Okay. Do you believe the United States was founded as a Christian nation?
No, and I can tell you a lot of why it wasn't.
All right.
Although it was very Protestant in its origination.
What are your views on American exceptionalism? Do you believe it exists? And do you believe that Christians should be pursuing this?
I mean, I'm a Britophile, so...
Well, they did have an empire once upon a time.
They
so-
did. Yeah, I'm not the biggest person to say that, yeah, no.
Okay. What are your views on the First Amendment?
I think not enough people understand what goes into it.
Right.
Not enough people understand that there's a difference between free speech and your right for it, and speech that's done in connection to like people who are spokespeople and things like that, which is why we have a lot of issues in this day and age of reality TV where people's free speech is tied in with corporations. That's why people have issues with the Duck Dynasty guys.
Yeah.
Going back a couple years. I think we need free speech, certainly. But I think a lot of people need to understand that someone's views and someone's words don't have to connect with who they work for. And what, to be yourself and speak freely of what you believe and understand is something that's protected.
And this question was actually submitted by a fellow Episcopalian. And she asked, how do you see your church, the Episcopal Church, progressing in religious competence? Refugees, other religions, etc. How do you see that happening?
Um, I think a lot has been done recently in interfaith work, in ways of trying to understand one another as people of faiths, even though those faiths might be different. I think a lot of work has been done in communication on a wider spectrum to say that even though this person might not believe the same things as us, that their beliefs are valid. There's not, even though there is still a communication of this is our faith and we are firm in it and this is what we want and believe, it's not very much a big picture idea of your faith is wrong and here's why. We're very much taking a stance of, okay, cool, here's what we believe. What do you believe? And finding equal ground.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Again, thank you for watching. I hope that you appreciated this interview, and come back next week for a new one. We look forward to seeing you back here. So don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.